It's time for another episode of I Am Northwest Arkansas, the podcast covering the intersection of business, culture, entrepreneurship, and life in general here in the Ozarks. Whether you are considering a move to this area or trying to learn more about the place you call home, we've got something special for you. Here's our host, Randy Wilburn.
Hey folks, and welcome to another episode of I Am Northwest Arkansas, the podcast that bridges business, culture, entrepreneurship, and life here in the Ozarks. And I'm your host, Randy Wilburn. Excited to be with you today. And I just want to jump right into this conversation. I just sat down at the kitchen table of Rachel Fox Kippett, otherwise known as Rachel Fox, from NWA Girl Gang. And we connected not too long ago online. And I just looked at everything that NWA Girl Gang was doing. And I was really interested to want to learn more about Rachel and about her mission and just about just the movement that is taking place here in Northwest Arkansas. And so without further ado, Rachel, how are you doing this morning?
I'm great. Thanks for coming over today. I'm so excited to do this. This is my very first podcast,
and it probably won't be your last. But no, we started talking, for those of you that are listening, we started talking about a lot of things. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's just so much good content that I shared in the 30 minutes that I've already been in her home, hanging out with her and her husband, Scott, and her son, Ethan, and her other two kids are in school right now. But I got the chance to build some buildings with her son and hang out with her dogs and you know, it was really good. But that's, you know, that we're full service here when it comes to podcasting. We go wherever we need to go and we do whatever we need to do to get a great podcasting episode. So I'm just sitting here with Rachel, and I would love it for you just to kind of share with the audience. I know people have seen you before. They've seen NWA Girl Gang on Instagram. They've seen you represent your organization on several of the local news stations. And but I would just like for you to kind of tell the audience a little bit about who Rachel Fox is, and then I'd like you to kind of share the superhero origin of NWA Girl Gang and how it came about.
Oh, wow. So it's hard for me to pick a spot to start because I have a very complicated background, but I think it started with having my firstborn. She was born with Down syndrome. Her name is Eva. Mm-hmm. And so my husband and I have been advocating for her, but not only that, but advocating for people to be represented equally, no matter their abilities. And so I come from an art and photography background in advertising, marketing, and media.
Okay.
My husband and I are also from Rochester, New York. And then I have some family I have some family in Brooklyn right now. And so we came from a really colorful, creative city that's just a melting pot of different backgrounds. And when you're in an older city, you see that, Philadelphia and, NYC, Boston, which you know about, you know. So we lived in a neighborhood when we had Eva that, there was a doctor a couple houses down, but there was also people that were, in halfway houses. So,
yeah,
but you live together, right? And it's a beautiful thing. Diversity is a beautiful thing. Inclusion is a beautiful thing. But it wasn't until I became a parent of a child that was not seen as being typical, where it was just a complete change of perspective. And then you started to see all of the problems in our society to where, that's not right, and you start questioning the way things are done because you have a child that might be neglected in society or being left out or treated differently. And that's not okay. So, I started working with the Changing the Face of Beauty movement when Eva was around 2 years old. And that was to really promote diversity within media and advertising and marketing and entertainment, because there was a real void of diversity in these areas, in visual, on TV, in magazines, in photography. And so I worked really hard with my photography skills and also my husband, who was a professional photographer at one point, to try and create these editorials with children of all colors, of all ethnicities, of all abilities, because we didn't have that. And so fast forward, the industry has changed a lot. Now we're seeing more inclusive forms of advertising and marketing and media, and we're also seeing some incredible people in the disabled community and the differently abled community that are walking the runway and on movies and having their own shows and running their own businesses, and they're doing it because they didn't have a voice. And we have adults with different abilities saying, hey, no, I'm doing this thing, right? I'm doing the darn thing.
Yeah.
And no one's going to tell me otherwise. So we have given people with different abilities a voice. And so inclusion, diversity, it's my jam, right?
Okay.
That's what's most important to me because, I know firsthand as a parent of a child that has different abilities that, there's a place for her and she is going to kill it, right? She's going to be amazing. And so I started working for Babykins magazine, which is an international children's magazine, as an advertising director. And so it was important for me to work with brands that represented children of all abilities and ethnicities and backgrounds through the magazine, which was mostly geared towards children's clothing, toys, everything. So it was a really incredible experience to work on something like that where I could actually make a difference through my work by doing contributing to the blog. So I was a blog contributor, but also it opened a whole bunch of doors to speak as an advocate of a parent in the special needs community, but also an advocate for Down syndrome and inclusion in the industry.
Yeah.
And so so I started working with brands to continue to promote that mission that I had, to make sure that we were representing all kids at all times,
Right.
And that just led to a whole bunch of different opportunities. And then we found ourselves in North Carolina. And my daughter, Eva, was in an inclusive preschool with children of all abilities, regular kids. I hate using the word typical or regular, but it was a regular preschool class that was inclusive. There were children that have different abilities in the class, and we loved it. And then it was time to transition to kindergarten, and they said, well, she's not going to kindergarten because she's not ready for kindergarten and we don't have another place to put her. So they were telling us the only option was that she needed to go into a self-contained classroom, which means that she's in a classroom that is primarily children with primarily children on an IEP, which means they have a different ability, or they are behind, or whatever the case is, or they may have autism. They have some sort of diagnosis, and so to me that really hurt, because I have a daughter that thrives off of being around regular kids, typical kids. She mirrors behaviors. She looks to other kids to be, for their example. And she really excels, which is why she did so amazing in a regular dance class. And we found out that she's a beautiful dancer. But if you don't give them the opportunity to try, these things, then how are you ever going to know what their strengths and what their weaknesses are, but really where they can shine.
Right.
And so it was always important for me to play to her strengths. And we were just so upset that we had to go into this exclusive, but this self-contained classroom where she wouldn't be with other kids, right?
Yeah.
Other regular kids.
Yeah.
And so we felt like she was neglected, that things weren't happening the way we wanted them to. And it was time for the next school year where they were going to I like to say bully because they don't give you options. So I felt like we were bullied into agreeing to a classroom that was called an intellectually disabled classroom.
Right.
That was the name of the classroom, where she would never be able to be mainstreamed, where she'll never be able to get a regular diploma, a high school diploma. And it's a path that you really can't get out of.
Yeah.
And so we took the county to mediation, and nobody helped us. And we had to navigate our rights as a parent to try to figure out how we were going to get Eva on the right path of an inclusive education and to be in a regular kindergarten classroom. So we'd be holding her back, but she'd be on the right path of a general ed placement. And it was exhausting. And we had to pay money for somebody, a speech pathologist, to prove that she was academically capable. They want proof. Our word isn't good enough as parents, even though we know what the best, setting is for our child and the least restrictive environment for her. But it's not good enough because it means money, right? They have to pay people to be, an extra teacher and assistant. They have to pay money to, be on call as, as she transitions to classrooms or, whatever she might need.
Right.
So we knew this was going to be a really long and exhausting road in the state of North Carolina and with the schools. And we really didn't see, we could have gone a private route, but oftentimes private schools don't have the special ed resources that they need to make our kids most successful. Sometimes they lack in the money for that kind of funding in that area. And so, we weren't really connecting with Raleigh in North Carolina. We love everybody in North Carolina, and it was a beautiful place, and we have family still there.
Yeah.
And so it's a great place to visit. But we just knew as a parent of a child with different abilities, it was just going to be a battle that we'd have to fight every single year. And so my editor that I was working for Babykins magazine said, "Hey, I'm moving to Northwest Arkansas." And we started researching the area, and my husband's like, "Whoa, there's bike trails, and it's like the best dog parks and the schools and the family. And there's all of these awards for Northwest Arkansas." And we're like, "What's going on in Northwest Arkansas?"
Right.
We need to know about this. And so we researched Northwest Arkansas and the area and the housing market and everything. And it just the stars aligned. And then we found out about Bentonville schools and that we had a pretty good chance at getting a regular education for Eva. And, as we're fighting to get the placement, because an IEP travels no matter what stage you're in.
Yeah.
And so we needed them to give us the placement for a regular ed, setting. And so we did. And then we hopped in our U-Haul and we blindly moved here.
Wow.
We did video tours of houses here. And so we didn't even see this house before we moved here. We didn't see the area. We're just like, nope, we need to be here in Northwest Arkansas. And we're not moving anywhere. We're going to be here at least until the kids are done with school.
Yeah.
But we've just felt so connected to Northwest Arkansas before we even moved. And they welcomed us with open arms in the Bentonville schools and said, "Yeah, you want an inclusive education? You want a regular ed placement? Come on in." And we said, "Oh, thank you. Thank you." I mean, it's just, you have to surround yourself with people that get it, right?
Absolutely. No, I love that story. And I'm actually glad that you told it the way that you did. And you aren't the first person that I've spoken to on this podcast, as well as just in general, in me being here for 5 years, that has kind of told me kind of a serendipitous story about how they ended up here, right? Your boss or someone that you've worked with, my boss at the time, and someone that I had worked with previously, we were owners of a company together. He convinced me to move here. There wasn't a snowball's chance in that I was actually moving to Northwest Arkansas prior to that. But just things happen for a reason. And now I look back 5 years later and I'm like, hey, I'm here and it's great. And, it is a different place. And every place has its challenges. But, again, I wanted to create this podcast just for the simple reason of getting this message out about this great place in the middle of the country that where not only are there successful businesses, but there are successful entrepreneurs. There are successful individuals. The culture is continuing to develop and evolve on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And with people like you and others that are adding to the tapestry that is Northwest Arkansas, this place is quickly formulating into a place to be reckoned with. And as we were saying before we started recording, that man, like you said about Raleigh, how it's grown, and the Research Triangle, the Raleigh-Durham area, it's a nice place. It's a beautiful part of the country, like you said. It's near the ocean. That's the only thing that they have that we don't have. We're not an hour. We can't. We just can't get the beach. Yeah, that is
not
sad.
My husband. He's not a beach guy, but
right.
my kids and I.
Well, I'm a beach guy, and so but we certainly miss that. But we're about 9.5 hours from Destin, so there's that. But anyway, the point I'm making here is that there are a lot of places around the country that are really trying to open up doors to get people to come. But Northwest Arkansas, to me, is a very special place as far as that's concerned. And that's why I have found it a mission of mine to let people know and share with them what I found out about it. And now what you're finding out and what you're sharing here on this podcast, I think is going to be beneficial for some parents in some other part of the country that are going to hear it, and maybe they have a child that they're dealing with in their local community, and their interests aren't being served at the highest level possible, and they know that they have options, and one option certainly is Northwest Arkansas. So
it definitely is.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. I think that's really, really important. Tell me a little bit about. So you're not only are you a professional photographer, you're an author. Obviously, you do marketing on a number of levels, and we connected, or we saw each other also at NWA Fashion Week, which was an outstanding event, and that was another event that brought together a wide cross section of the community,
right,
to celebrate the creative ability of those designers that are both local as well as from far away, that came here, that descended upon Fayetteville and descended upon Northwest Arkansas to share their designs and their ability to create some amazing clothing. And I was blown away by what I saw. I've been to several fashion shows before in the past, but I was like, wow, this is. I kept tapping myself because I'm like, this is in Fayetteville. I'm in Arkansas,
right,
and look at what these guys are doing. And you mentioned Robin Atkinson, who kind of spearheaded that as well as some others. But I would love for you just to kind of share real quickly your experience with NWA Fashion Week and how that has kind of helped you as you have found several different opportunities to serve this local community with your skill set and ability.
Yeah. So to rewind a little bit, so I started the NWA Girl Gang on October 28th. I started an Instagram account because that's what I do. I can, brand anybody. I can brand a lot, and I can do social media. I get paid to do it. So
right.
I started an Instagram account for NWA Girl Gang, not really making myself a focus. So no one really knew who I was. And I still get messages to this day, like, who are you? Where did you come from?
Exactly.
And so at this point I had only, we just had our 1-year anniversary in September of living here in Northwest Arkansas. So I just about lived here a year.
Okay.
But I started the Instagram account for NWA Girl Gang. I had seen some similar community organizations. The Rock Girl Gang, in Rochester, New York, where my hometown is. They had something similar. And then I was really inspired by Grace Bonney's In the Company of Women, which is a book. It's just this giant book filled of women who have overcome adversity with their talents, and they're just really incredible women who are all over the world, or all over the country. I'm not sure, but that just, they've gone through a lot, and they've overcome the trials in their lives, and it was really inspiring. So I moved here, and at this point I'd only been here a month, but my job was to kind of immerse myself in, the area, the restaurants and stuff. And so I started. Now I'm here in Bentonville, so Bentonville was my first experience with living here in Arkansas. in Northwest Arkansas, and I hadn't really seen much because we didn't look at the area before we moved here.
Right.
So I started picking up magazines, and the first thing that I was really devastated about is all the houses were brick. And there was all these neighborhoods. I'm like, why are they all brick? Why do all the houses look the same? And then I started, dropping my kids off at carpool and, going to restaurants. And I'm like, it's pretty homogenous here, huh?
Right. Right.
I mean, to say it, I'm without, it was hard because, when we still go back to New York for summers, there's people half dressed and wearing bunny slippers in the local grocery store, right? So it's a lively city.
Right.
And then, people, just the way people dress, they're probably working for Walmart, they're business casual, there's a lot of professionals here, middle-class families, and we're all living in this area right here in Bentonville, and it was like, Now, I know a lot of bloggers that I've followed on Instagram because I'm Instagram savvy, and I'm like, there's more to Northwest Arkansas, that this little pocket that everybody thinks is Northwest Arkansas, which is, Bentonville, right?
Right.
And the Walmart country, what do they call it?
Some people say Wally World. Some people call it, there are a lot of different names. And as I've actually spoken to people that work at Walmart, they all have different ways to describe it. Some people, like I know I had the girls from Jazzy J NWA,
love them.
Jerron and Jasmine on, and Jasmine, it's funny because Walmart people relate to Northwest Arkansas in relation to store numbers. So it's like, well, I won't go south of 5260 or whatever that Walmart is that's on 49. I think it's like right in Springdale. I think there's a store number associated with it. So they use store numbers to kind of delineate where things are. But that's just the culture, right? I mean, it's just the way it is. It's totally fine. And I think there's something to be said for what this culture is able to do. And outside of Northwest Arkansas, people talk about, maybe they say things about Walmart because Walmart has its challenges as a corporate citizen, one way or the other, as any corporation does. Yeah. No corporation's perfect as far as that's concerned. But, you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. And I also think that, there's way more good things that are happening because of Walmart, because of the legacy of Walmart. So, and I've talked about Sam Walton quite a bit. I've talked about the Walton Family Foundation. Hopefully somebody's from the foundation is listening to this at some point, because I definitely want to get you guys on the podcast. And one of my dream interviews would be to sit down with Alice Walton or one of Sam's other kids, and talk with them, as well as some of his grandkids, because I think it's just a great story. But here's a family that was given so much by this area and by the country, by mind you, but they've given so much back. Yeah. And then you look at Crystal Bridges, you look at the Momentary, you look at everything, everywhere that the Walton Family Foundation has put their fingers on it. And granted, you might say, well, that's just the Walton family. Yes, but it is an extension of Northwest Arkansas. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I have a lot of good things to say about the Walton Family Foundation. I'll get there. And so within the first month of being here, I really wanted to start something. I had this dream to start some sort of movement or community organization where I could empower other women, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not your typical stay-at-home mom. I've been working ever since my daughter was young, because we had to be home with her because she had therapy visits and stuff. And I was so stir crazy that I decided to start my own creative art class company for, private lessons with families in Raleigh because I needed to work. And then I started freelancing. And so I've always been home kind of for my kids, but I've been working really hard. And so I had this idea, there's got to be other women out there, other mothers that, being mom isn't just who they are. And I was tired of having conversations like, oh, cool. What do you do? At school. And they'd be like, well, I'm busy being mom. And I'm like, okay, well, what else do you do? Like, how are you contributing to the community or society, or what do you do for yourself? Yeah. And so I wanted to create the Girl Gang, because I wanted to feature women that were following their dreams and their passions. And, but then being here in Northwest Arkansas, I quickly changed my mission because I felt that there was a need to not only support and network and empower the women here in the community, but the diverse and unique women here in Northwest Arkansas. And so I changed my mission to promoting and celebrating visible diversity through female entrepreneurship.
Okay.
So my focus became all of, featuring and networking and supporting and recognizing all of the women here in Northwest Arkansas that are unbelievably talented, but also so unique and so diverse, and to create an inclusive, like an all-inclusive organization and movement. And also I didn't realize that everybody kind of functioned so separately here. I asked my realtor and I'm like, where's the city? And she's like, honey, there's no city here. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, where did people go to get together?
Right.
And they're like, well, there's Fayetteville, 35 minutes away, and there's Bentonville and Rogers and Springdales, and they all have their own little downtowns. And I'm like, well, that's weird.
Yeah.
And so I also found that there was a disconnect with our female demographic because people just stayed in Fayetteville. Women just stayed in Fayetteville, and they had their own little, I don't want to say clique because that's not really how
silo. I think silo is a better word.
I like that better. Yeah, it's much better. But I felt like, and then there's women and let's talk about creatives, actual female creatives, my main audience and demographics where, then people were just kind of staying in Bentonville. And so I saw that there was all of these amazing groups that supported women in the community, Women Run and female entrepreneurship groups and women empowerment groups. But I still felt like everybody was kind of segregated by the geography of the area. But it also felt, maybe it's not intentional, but that everybody had their own agenda, right? And so I wanted to create something that was like, well, what's in it for everybody else? Because I'm certainly not going to be it's not about me. Starting the Girl Gang isn't about me. It's about making sure that I connect and bridge the gap between all of these amazing things that are happening with our female community, and identify as female. I should make sure I say that too. But, I wanted to be a hub where I can share your event and your event and your event. It's not about my thing, right? Mm-hmm. We need something to stay connected because of just the lay of the land, but also because everybody's got a thing, right? Yeah. Everybody's got a thing. And the amount of events that are going on, I mean, my calendar is chock full of events.
You know what? Let me ask you this. Since you brought that up, how do you even keep track? Because I know a lot of people are like, man, they hear about stuff after the fact. It's too late by then. It's like, how do you keep up with it? Because I even struggle with it sometimes. How do you keep up with all the local happenings here in Northwest Arkansas so that you don't miss something?
Facebook events is really great, but I mean, a lot of people reach out to me personally, but it is also my job to find events, right. and I share it. I share your events through the Girl Gang channel, the NWA Girl Gang channel. So if you have an event to share, people started just tagging me, not tagging me, but tagging the NWA Girl Gang, knowing that they have events. So I just reshare that. I do have to say, Jazzy J, they do a really good job resharing all the events in the area. I couldn't live without them. So I work off of, their sharing, and we just kind of feed off of each other. And another reason why I started the NWA Girl Gang is because I think, I don't know if we talked about it yet, but people are disengaging from social media.
Yeah.
And so one of the big ideas behind the NWA Girl Gang through, now I do networking events and events that connect women in the community. So we're never at the same place. And we will travel to female-run businesses to have meetups as often as I can, because I obviously wear a lot of hats. But And that's the idea, is like we want to get people off of their phone, right? People are craving these experiences. And as an art and design enthusiast, that's why I'm so excited about Northwest Arkansas, because what Crystal Bridges is doing, and
and the Momentary. That's going to be off the hook.
And they have selected some of the most diverse and unique and talented people. If they're doing it on purpose, if they're not doing it on purpose, I don't really care, because they are creating this amazing area filled with like very talented, creative people. And that makes me so happy. But it also means that we're filling in, the area with people that aren't from here. And so sometimes it takes an outsider looking in to make something better. And that's what I hope to do with the Girl Gang, by connecting this, this kind of disengaged area, because of just, I like to say that the geography is a lot of the problem. It's far. Like, you drove from Fayetteville today.
Yeah,
it's a drive,
I did.
right?
It's not that bad. Well, and it's all relative for me. And I know people that complain about it, and I've talked about it on other episodes about traveling, even close distances in certain places where people aren't used to traveling a lot.
Yeah.
Then that becomes problematic. For me, it's like no big deal. And I look at this, I think what you're doing is right, because it's starting to bridge the gap between Fayetteville and Bentonville. And when I liken Northwest Arkansas, I liken it to a sandwich. The bottom piece of the sandwich of bread is Fayetteville. The top piece is Bentonville, and you've got Rogers and Springdale making up all the meat in between. But the thing about it is, is that it's, have you ever had a sandwich where you only had one slice of bread? It wasn't as good.
Right.
You need the complete sandwich for it to be good. Yeah. Have you ever had a sandwich without the meat? Unless you don't eat meat, it's not as good. So the bottom line is, I think each of these areas plays a part in it. And then when you add in some of the other outerlying places like Siloam, like Eureka Springs, and other areas, and all of the state parks that are in this area that dot and surround Northwest Arkansas, or a part of Northwest Arkansas, Beaver Lake. There's so much here.
Yeah.
And I just tell people they have to get out and explore. And honestly, had I not done this podcast, I would have never realized all of the great things that are here. And actually, this podcast reaffirmed for me my decision, just like you said, you were staying here until your kids matriculated through school, that my wife and I were committing to stay in this area for at least 10 plus years until my youngest son gets out of school, because we want to grow here.
Yeah.
And see what happens.
It's a perfect time to do that.
It's
such a crucial time of change, but it's really good change. And it's, change that it's happening at a pace that's not outgrowing the area too quickly, which we're excited about.
Right.
And so I promise I'm getting to Fashion Week stuff, but
no, it's fine.
So, knowing that, diversity and inclusion is my thing, that it's my thing, right? And then you throw my love of art and design, and it just became this really eclectic, thing that happened through the NWA Girl Gang, of just all different types of people, women that are advocates, that are makers, that are small business owners, that are activists. And there's room for everybody here in our female community, but there's room for everybody here. And what I found is I personally started reaching out to the women in the community. So I started featuring women right off the bat, on the Instagram. And no one knew who I was. Only a few of them really asked who I was. But, they're like, thank you. Yeah, that would be great. And a lot of them were maybe they're painters, or maybe they were talking about their own, advocacy, or maybe they run a small shop or clothing store, and they're like, who are you and why are you doing this? I'm like, I'm just getting to know everybody here in the community. Yep. But knowing that everybody that I reached out to had something to offer in the area, and that just came from, maybe they weren't from here originally, but it really is, what I found was it's just a beautiful, diverse place. And you don't see it at first, right? You don't see it at first. And then I had to convince my cousin in Brooklyn. They're like, you've got a Frank Lloyd Wright house. I'm like, just so you know,
yes,
Architectural Digest featured the NWA twice already.
Exactly.
So now we have people, we're getting the attention that we need. They're like, hey, no, we're here.
Yes.
And we're doing some really good things as far as arts and culture. So watch out, right? And then Robin Atkinson found me. She's like, what are you doing? Who are you? Where did you come from? Because the success of the NWA Girl Gang was so organic and it happened so quickly. We haven't even had our first anniversary yet, but we've had 7 or 8 events under our belt. We have over 2,000 followers, which is not bad for, not even being around a year. And we've connected more women than I think anybody will ever know. Either they're connecting for work opportunities or for support, or collaborating. And that's an amazing thing. And I do have help. Sarah Conley is a NYC resident who now lives here in Northwest Arkansas. She's a fashion writer and blogger, and so she helps me a lot, but she is also an activist for body positivity, and so she is a plus size model, and she writes on behalf of the community that again is unrepresented, and so that's really huge that we could collaborate on a lot of ideas because there's still things that need to be changed, right?
Yeah.
We still need to make sure that we're being accessible to the majority of the people, or accessible to just everybody, right? Accessibility is like the key word moving forward. Is your organization is accessible? Or is your clothing accessible? Is your house accessible? Is your business accessible? And those are all things that we need to start thinking about and talking about because we haven't been talking about it. And so that's some goals that we hope to accomplish through the Girl Gang. So Robin Atkinson found me and she said, hey, I've got this thing called NWA Fashion Week. You want to do some marketing for me? And I said, heck yeah, I do. Because really, scouring over Instagram and Facebook and social media, I had found Fashion Week and I said, whoa, look at this. This is just about the most diverse thing I've seen in the heartland.
Yeah, exactly.
And she did. I mean, she really reinvented Fashion Week that had been around for a while. But she kind of rebooted it about 3 years ago. And she was really showcasing the most diverse talent and giving opportunities to creatives that were from all backgrounds and, might not necessarily be from here. And so last season I did marketing and PR for the spring Fashion Week shows.
Okay.
And I have since moved over to the Arkansas Arts and Fashion Forum as marketing director, which is the nonprofit organization that is the year-round support of the creatives, so that it is the organization that works with, that funds the designers to go to Fashion Week. But not only that, we were recently given a grant by the Walton Family Foundation. So for me, this is a new this is something that I don't know very much about, but it's a new opportunity for me because I don't know anything about nonprofits.
Right.
But I had the pleasure to go to the Walton Family Foundation Communications Building Workshop, which was an all-day workshop. And I was in a room full of the most amazing nonprofits and some familiar faces I saw, people working with the Amazium, who obviously I'm so impressed because they're always working towards accessibility. Crystal Bridges, they're always working towards accessibility. We have some really important organizations here that are working towards accessibility. And so it really just makes me so happy to be in a place that's working to include everybody in the community. So I also got to see all of the benefits, love or hate Walmart. It's trickling down into this community. It's giving us the opportunity here in Bentonville and in Bentonville schools to, be able to pay teachers well,
Right.
Indirectly,
Yeah.
right? But, if we don't have a successful community, that's making money and, moving money and helping nonprofit organizations, then that opportunity to have, inclusive experiences or, accessible experiences, probably won't happen, right?
Yeah.
Because it costs money.
It
costs money to make those changes, even to like towns. I'm not going to say names, but I've been to towns, little towns where they don't even have ramps up to the public library.
Right.
And we're not just talking about accessibility as far as like getting into spaces or being in spaces, but I mean, it could be experiences too, of course, in our schools. So, so working with the Arkansas Arts and Fashion Forum, the idea is that we want to put into place small batch manufacturing to keep a lot of the fashion here in Northwest Arkansas, right? So we want to be able to manufacture clothing with our local designers and our local creatives that are here in the area. But not only that, we've been working with the Marshallese Coalition of Arkansas.
Okay.
We've been teaching these women to sew so we can provide them job opportunities. So
That's huge. That's huge.
It's so huge. So we
Yeah.
can put that micro batch, that idea of like, the micro batch manufacturing into place, but also give them jobs, but, give them opportunities to be their own entrepreneurs and to learn a new skill. I mean, who knows what they might do with that kind of knowledge, right?
Right.
And now I hope everybody can see the connections of what I'm about and, what I do is, and it's really just about making this a vibrant and colorful place, which I know it's going to be. And I think if I had come a year later with this idea about the NWA Girl Gang, I don't know that I would be as successful.
Why?
Because I think I came in at a point where there was, we're seeing a lot of new organizations pop up where we're really involving the community, right? And and of course, Fashion Week is an amazing thing. So we have things here that are just really incredible. But I think if I'd come a little bit later, I don't know. Like,
Well,
I felt
timing
like
is everything.
Timing. I think it's just about the
It
timing,
is.
because now we have the momentary coming in. We have all of these things, like really cool stuff that is happening.
Right.
But I think I came in at a time where it's like, people were still feeling a little reserved, a little disconnected, and it could have been, whatever it is. Maybe they felt maybe out of place in the workplace, or maybe disconnected through, like, again, the how everybody is just spread out and stuff. But now we're seeing more and more of these experiencing, creating opportunities, like Crystal Bridges. They're rolling out new exciting things every day. But the momentary, oh my goodness, that's going to be huge, right?
It is, yeah.
It's gonna be so huge.
And you're right. I mean, and the momentary wasn't, I didn't even know about that when I first moved here. Of course, I mean, that wasn't, it might have been a thought on the production schedule or the programmatic schedule of Crystal Bridges in terms of how they were going to expand and create a much more involved environment to share the arts, which is what the momentary is going to be. But you're absolutely right. I get it. And I think people need to understand that timing is everything, and that certain platforms, certain objectives aren't always ready to be well received. And I think what you're doing with NWA Girl Gang and your platform that you have so deftly created in less than a year's time it's come along at the perfect time.
Yeah.
And so I think it's an opportunity to grow. And when you look back now, maybe 2 or 3 years down the road, when you've got 36 months, 48 months under your belt of doing this, and, I'm not rushing time, but I'm just saying that you'll be able to look back and say with some perspective, wow, that did really make a difference, that I was able to come about on the scene at this point, and look what we've been able to do in 3 to 4 years. And I say all that because I really want people listening to this podcast to understand that, Northwest Arkansas is kind of like this caterpillar that has become a butterfly, and it is metamorphosizing into something very, very special, if I can use that analogy. And, a lot of times when you look at a caterpillar, you're like, oh, that's just a caterpillar. It's no big deal. But once it becomes a butterfly, And the butterfly here, I mean, we're 450,000 people. They say we're going to be 850,000 people by 2040. There's 32.2 net new people a day moving to Northwest Arkansas. So, your family included, my family included. So, I mean, it's to be expected that this area it was never going to stay the same for forever. And I'm sure there's some people that are like, oh, I didn't want it to change. And some people are saying the same thing about Atlanta. Some people are saying the same thing about the Raleigh-Durham area. But no place ever stays the same. But places that grow that allow for diversity of thought, diversity of ideas, and grow in a measured way where, they're constantly looking as to how they can serve the needs of the local community that's currently there, in addition to attracting those to come, are going to benefit from that. And I think Northwest Arkansas is doing a really good job of that.
I do too.
I think every Convention and Visitors Bureau from Bentonville on down to Fayetteville has an understanding of what it's going to take for this area to be special. It's already special. I believe in you say what you want to see happen. You say it now, and you're doing that with NWA Girl Gang, and I certainly applaud you.
Thank you.
That you're creating this platform and that, doors are being opened up for you, for your skill set and ability as a marketer, as a professional photographer. There are a lot of opportunities there. And, your husband gets to work from home and he has the benefit of having a really good job where he's able to express himself. I think it's just important. And, my last question for you as we close out is, what's next for Rachel Fox, as if you don't already have a ton of stuff to do. But what's next? Give us just a quick cliff note of what you think the next steps are for NWA Girl Gang and the things that you plan to do.
I don't know. I am very... oh goodness. I let everything just kind of flow, and I take every day at a time. And I think at the end of the day, I said, well, did I do everything in my power to be the best person I can be? Did I work hard enough today? Did I spend enough time with my family and my kids? And, I don't think I'll ever be that balanced person. And so obviously I'm working at creating boundaries and like taking things off the table. And, sometimes I've always been a yes person, which I think has been the key to my success is, I've never turned down anything, but I'm starting to have the luxury to say, okay, all right, I'm more productive, not multitasking. And I think when you work at home, I do have an office now.
Okay.
But my husband and I have worked from home for many years. And so I think it's really hard to separate what is working time, what is home time, what is, husband and wife time and parent time and stuff. But I feel like our society has just blurred those boundaries so badly,
They have.
And so...
Yeah. Work-life balance it doesn't exist the way that we think it does.
Right? So we are 30% less productive multitasking.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
so I'm trying to focus on one thing at a time. What I am focusing on is that we have a media partnership with the Little Craft Show. I'm really excited about that because the Little Craft Show is one of the most impressive handmade markets that I've ever seen. And we have people coming from Tulsa and Kansas City and Missouri that want a piece of this craft show. They want to be in it. So we're really excited to be working with the Little Craft Show as they roll out their 3 different shows. There's one in Bentonville, there's one in Fayetteville, there's usually one in Springdale. And so we are going to be focusing the next month or 2 on featuring the women that participate in the Little Craft Show. And we're going to do an editorial, and we're going to probably I do have a blog.
Well, we'll put all of that in the show notes because I want to make sure that people know how to connect with you and what's the best way for them to connect with you?
They can message me at the NWA Girl Gang on Instagram.
Right.
You can find me on Facebook.
Okay.
They can also reach out to me. I'm my footprint is, I don't know, it's there,
Yeah,
and so you can just kind of Google me or Facebook
and I'll get whatever
name
email
too.
you want to share with us, and we'll put that in the show notes as well. So
So you can just put in Rachel Fox Rachel Fox Kippett or NWA Girl Gang. My Instagram, my personal Instagram is Outside the Box Fox. That's my nickname.
I like that.
Because I like to think outside the box. My name is Fox. You get it. It's catchy.
Right.
So the @ and the first 0 in outside the box is a 0 because somebody had took the O and then they're not using it. But
I hate that. Those digital squatters. I mean,
Yeah.
So.
But I'd also want to give a shout out to my husband who I had an event, a speaking engagement last night. And there are times where I'm not confident in my abilities to get everything done in a week or in a month. And he's the one that's pushing me out the door.
Right.
So I couldn't do it without his support, all the different roles. But I think, I mean, I'm pretty sure you'd have to ask him, but pretty sure he's confident in my abilities to make things happen. Not just for me, but just connecting other people. Right.
Yeah.
And I said, when you walked in here, like, we're very visibly transparent people, right? We wear all of our feelings and emotions. Maybe it's the New Yorker inside of us. I don't really know. But,
Right.
My husband also likes to joke around that I don't have any couth, but, I don't know. I think there's something, and that's going back to people that have just been on social media. They're glued to their phones, right? And I think just being completely candid is something that we're all just dying for, right?
Absolutely.
It's just for people
Yeah.
to be upfront and personal.
Listen,
you're doing it with podcasts. You're doing it, Randy.
I'm trying to, but I'm as guilty as the next of trying to wean myself off of social media. And actually, it's funny because one of the things, and I haven't really talked about it on this podcast, but I'm working on a book. And
Amazing.
I got some real clarity about the topic of that book, which I will share in a later episode of the podcast, because I do want to get this community involved with what I'm doing, because I think the conversation and the topic of this book is life affirming and life changing for anyone. It doesn't matter what age range you are, but I think when you hit 50, you get a certain perspective and a certain dose of understanding about life that maybe you don't have when you're 20 or 25. And so I know you're not there yet, but one day it's coming for you. And so, but I think it's interesting to do that. And I think it's our shared collective experiences are what really get us through on a regular basis. So you even just sharing with me before we got on this podcast and then sharing with the I Am Northwest Arkansas audience, it means the world, because I think people need to hear these stories. And you may have just said one or two little things that totally free somebody and say, you know what? I heard what Rachel was saying. I want to get out there and do something, or I want to get involved with what they're doing, or whatever. The bottom line is that we need to be out there encouraging each other on a regular basis, because there's enough bad news to go around. So we need to be focusing on and clinging to the life affirming things that are happening around us on a daily basis.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of times you would want to believe the news reports that there's just all doom and gloom, but there's a lot of good things. There's a lot of light out there. And I just want to encourage you, Rachel, as well as you, the listener, that there's a lot of good stuff happening out there, some of which you are probably doing. So go out there and continue to make a ruckus, as my friend Seth Godin says. And Rachel, we really appreciate having you on the podcast.
Thank you so much for coming and talking with me. And I'm so psyched to see more about your book and hear more about your book.
Well, yes. And I will reveal that soon, and I'll tell you a little bit more off air. But no, it's a long time coming, and I'm really looking forward to it. So,
amazing. Well, thank you for all that you do here in the community and for showcasing Northwest Arkansas, what it really is.
Okay, good. Well, I appreciate that. Well, there you have it, folks. Rachel Fox Kippen from NWA Girl Gang. She's doing a whole lot. She's a marketer. She's a professional photographer. She is a professional mom.
Yeah. That's for sure.
And an advocate for her kids. She does so much. She wears so many hats, but we just appreciate having her on the podcast. And we hope you enjoyed that. And we hope that you got a lot out of this. I think this podcast is going to be different because we had the chance to really hear from Rachel about her odyssey to get here to Northwest Arkansas. And sometimes we don't look at how people end up here in Northwest Arkansas. So the first 12 to 13 minutes, I really want to encourage you to go back and listen to those again, because she shared some very important pieces of information. One thing that I took away was just the willingness and the ability to find a school system that would work with her and her husband to create a very positive curriculum and a positive environment for her daughter. And I mean, that's what it's all about. And I know somebody that's listening to this that's considering moving to Northwest Arkansas and may have a child that needs certain they may need certain educational activities and certain things to be done that they might not be getting currently in their current school system. Well, I just got to tell you that I'm encouraged just to hear Rachel's story. You'll be encouraged by listening to it again and by sharing this information with someone that you know that may be coming to this area. But that's what we have for this week of this week's episode of I Am Northwest Arkansas. Again, I'm your host, Randy Wilburn, and as always, I'm excited to be with you. Remember, we come out every Monday at noon. We have a brand new episode, and my goal is to get this podcast out without fail every single week. I had a hiccup a couple of weeks ago, but we got that worked out. But nonetheless, I'm excited. This is, I think, episode 37 or 38. I mean, we're moving up there, and we're not even a year into this podcast. So we're going to keep them coming. If you have ideas about podcast episodes that you'd like to hear, or maybe people that you'd like me to have on the show, let me know. You can hit me up at randy@IamNorthwestArkansas.com. You can also check us out on social media, Instagram. All of our connections are there. And just visit IamNorthwestArkansas.com for all things related to the intersection of business, culture, entrepreneurship, and life here in the Ozarks. That's all I have for now. I will see you next week. Peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of I Am Northwest Arkansas. Check us out each and every week, available anywhere that great podcasts can be found. For show notes or more information on becoming a guest, visit IamNorthwestArkansas.com. We'll see you next week on I Am Northwest Arkansas.